we need to live in the present moment. And I will spend however long I've got left, I will spend the rest of my life doing just that. So for me, if nothing else, a legacy that I would leave behind to people is whoever and whatever we are. If this is instilled in us actually as children, and it's part of the work that I do with children in this country now, I instill in them that it doesn't matter who or what we are, where we come from, what our academic abilities like, what our financial background's like, what our culture is or our religion. It does not matter. Whoever we are enough.
That was Sue Curr, and this is the SHAIR Podcast.
It's time for the SHAIR Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host,
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the SHAIR Podcast. And today we have fearless Sue Curr joining us on the show. And if you go to Sue's website, you'll see that she fears less and lives more. She has an unbelievable story. I loved spending some time with Sue. She recently turned 58 years old, and for her birthday, the way she celebrated it was by jumping out of an airplane, skydiving, to face her fear of heights. If you want to check out that video, it's right on her website, suecurr.com. She's a life coach, she's a public speaker, she's a mom, she's a wife, she's amazing. And you're absolutely going to love this story because her rock bottom is horrific. And when you listen to her story, you'll see that she is literally only here by the grace of God. So let's dive into Sue's story. But first, if you'd like to know what's the best way to help support the show, here are a few of the best ways to do so. Number one, you can donate to the SHAIR Podcast. And to do so, you simply go to the website, www.theshairpodcast.com, and click on the top right corner of the website that says donate, or you can click on any of the yellow banners throughout the website that say donate via PayPal, and it will take you to our donate page. All the donations we collect go exclusively to promote, grow, and produce the podcast. So once again, if you have the wherewithal to do so and would like to donate to the SHAIR Podcast, then go to the website, click on the donate button, and make your donation today. The second way to help support the show is to subscribe on your mobile device. If you listen to the SHAIR Podcast on your phone and you click subscribe, you not only get notified every time a brand new episode is available, you also help support the show. When you subscribe, it dramatically increases our rankings on iTunes and Stitcher Radio, as well as other podcast platforms on the internet. And while you're at it, go ahead and leave us a 5-star rating and review, because I love to read those reviews at the beginning of every episode. And the third way to support the show is by joining the SHAIR Recovery Network. That is our SHAIR Podcast private group on Facebook with thousands of members in recovery that are all there for one common purpose: to carry a message of hope. We are a positive, loving, supportive community of individuals who live amazing lives and are here to inspire others to do the same. If you are unsure about what your next step will be towards recovery, then start by joining us in our private Facebook group. So go to Facebook, type in the SHAIR Recovery Network, and become a part of the solution today. Now, a quick message from Transitions Daily, and then on to the show. Would you like to join a free, anonymous online group that offers a daily topic email with popular recovery resources, accompanied by a secret Facebook group for discussion? Then go to dailyaaemails.com for more information about Transitions Daily. And don't forget to share dailyaaemails.com with friends, in meetings, and with sponsees in recovery. Hey, Sue, thanks for joining us.
Hi there, Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Excellent. I'm super excited to have you on the show. How are you feeling today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. I'm nice and happy and relaxed and raring to go.
All right, so let's do this. All right, so folks, today we have Sue Curr joining us on the SHAIR Podcast, and Sue is a motivational speaker, coach, author, and with a background in education and social health care. For the last 15 years, she has worked with people of all ages, enabling them to achieve their full potential and instilling in them the confidence to live life the way they want. That sound about right, Sue?
It certainly does. Absolutely, yes. It's what I try to do every day.
Good. Now, on your website, I see you flying out of a plane, or not flying out of a plane, diving out of a plane. Is that correct?
It is, yes. April the 28th this year. I set myself a challenge in October last year. My business name is Fear Less, Live More. And I suddenly realized that actually I could hardly run a business with a title like that if I was still scared of heights. So I decided that I would face my one remaining barrier, and I did a tandem skydive. Yeah. So,
wow.
And I did it in aid of a mental health charity that we have in the UK called Mind. So I did it as a sponsored thing and raised about the equivalent of about £600 for their charity.
So let me ask you that. How old are you, Sue?
Me, I will be 58 next birthday.
58, coming up 57 years old, diving or flying or jumping out of an airplane, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So I
am that fearless woman.
It goes to show you when you've got your mind set to something, anything is possible.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Oh man, I love it. So other than diving out or jumping out of airplanes, Sue, what does your normal daily routine look like, including recovery?
For me, the first thing every morning without fail these days is to say a little, not a prayer exactly, because I consider myself to be spiritual rather than religious, but very definitely give thanks for the fact that these days I am here still, alive, well, happy and whole. And it, regardless of how good, bad or indifferent the previous day's been, for me, these days, every day is a fresh start, always full of renewed optimism and fresh hope. So for me, that's a major part of the first thing that I do every morning is sort of say, right, okay, here it is, let's crack on. I try and get up about an hour earlier than the rest of the house because I live in a very busy household. And for me, I will spend, I don't know, maybe about 20 minutes or so reading.
Okay.
Usually some sort of personal development type tome, as it were. I listen an awful lot to the Zen channel on YouTube, sort of mindfulness meditation type tracks that just sort of get me into the zone when I can, and then I just then will collate my day in a way that makes sense to me so that I hit the ground running, as it were, full steam when I'm ready to crack on. As for the rest of the day, it would depend really what I've got lined up for that day. If I'm working, as in if I'm seeing clients or delivering workshops and that type of thing, then obviously that's the main focus. Every single day is different, which I like. Variety is the spice of life, as they say. And I try to keep to a similar schedule every day. So it'll be up a little bit of me time first thing before anybody else sort of surfaces. Because for me, and it has become so over the last 5 years, that the part of what was missing in my life previously was the little bit of the day that we should all have, which I've deemed to call me time, just to feed ourselves. And I don't mean physically to eat, I mean to feed and nourish our own souls. And if I can't, if I'm too busy, if I've got an early start to travel somewhere, for instance, I make sure that I fit that in at a later point in the day, but I do it every single day. So my days are full of variety. Some days I'm working with clients, others I'm in my home office writing and typing and scheduling and all that business. And these days I'm writing more and more programs to go into places like schools, for instance. I'm currently delivering an empowerment program in schools. So yeah, the day itself I allow to be varied. I don't like to be structured in terms of my work routine, but I do make time for me, and I do try and make time for my family as well.
Beautiful. Real quick question. Did you mention meetings in there, or do you have a 12-step fellowship that you follow?
I tried AA, and in actual fact, I keep I have a sobriety coin in my pocket, which has the the mantra of AA on it, and I use that as my touchstone. It didn't fit with me in terms of 12 steps at the time I tried it, because I don't actually think at that time I was ready. But I try very hard to stick to the principles. For me, I don't know at that time, and in the area where I was living at that time, then it's something about it didn't gel. But I suspect that said more about me at that time than anything else. But what I do incorporate into my life now is I'm a member of several online communities. SHAIR being one of them, and the other the major one for me in the UK is Team Sober UK, which is run along the lines of a recovery program, shall we say, but it's more like a support network, a group, and for me that works better. Peer support without the what's the word I'm looking for? Without the rigors of the structure, following a set pattern. And I think it's probably because I'm more of a spontaneous person, which is probably what got me into trouble in the first place, to be fair.
I gotcha. Okay. All right. So understanding that, and also taking into consideration that you mentioned earlier that you're not a religious person, but you're a spiritual person. And many times what I like to ask my clients too is, what does your spiritual connection or your higher power look like to you?
For me, I think I consider myself, I think it was Wayne Dyer actually that said originally that we're not humans having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience.
I agree.
And I think I very firmly fall into that school. And I think, to be fair, I always did. I just didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's being, if I on days when I struggle, which I think we all do from time to time, I need to be close to nature. So for me, I need to go somewhere totally removed from, or as removed from civilization as you can get in the UK, because it's a very small place. But I need to be near the water, particularly, preferably the sea or an ocean, and I need to be able to ground myself in nature, because as a race, we have so much to learn if we look to the things that were here long before us, the oceans and the mountains and that type of thing. And I take inspiration, if you like, from the things that, if I look at a tree. I went to India this year, and for instance, I went to a place on the outskirts of New Delhi called Qutub Minar, and there they have a tree of wisdom, which is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old. And I went with an Indian friend, and she took me to this place because it was a very spiritual place, and she couldn't get me away from this tree because I literally was tree hugging. Now that sounds a bit, it sounds a bit,
I get it.
But it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old, this tree, and the roots are all growing up the outside of the tree. And they call it the tree of knowledge. And you know what? It's I wrote a post recently about how we could actually learn so much from something like trees. They've been there, they stand there, they take whatever the world throws at them. They don't complain, they give shelter and all that business. And if humans, without obviously taking away the wooden aspect, but if humans could be more like trees, for instance, I think we'd all get on a lot better as a species.
We don't have time to go into that one.
No.
All right. So Sue, please tell us, how much clean time do you have, and when is your anniversary date?
I have just celebrated my 5 years.
Beautiful.
5 years sobriety, because alcohol was my drug of choice, shall we say. And I turned 5 years sober on the 26th of September.
On the 26th of September. So recently.
Yes, this last, just over a week ago. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I celebrated that by paying homage to my skydive earlier in the year, and I created a workshop called "The Sky's Not being in capitals. The Sky's Not the Limit. We are." And I delivered my first solo, as opposed for myself, not a corporation, workshop under that title on the weekend of my anniversary. I thought, what more of a fitting way to celebrate 5 years than doing that by empowering other people to know that in sharing my story, because a large part of the workshop is based around my sharing the journey that I've had. And whilst it's not you don't want to do it like that, you need to do it like this, because there's nothing worse than a reformed smoker, drinker, or anything. That's a politically incorrect word. I do apologise. But the lessons that I learned along life's road, which I've couched as, for me, mental ill health, which is what started my journey with alcohol in the first place. When I coupled it with self-medication, it became for me the loneliest road on earth.
Right.
And if I can spare anybody that journey alone, then, if I can make a difference to one person, then I'm a happy bunny, because we fall down a lot because we think others don't care, or we think they don't notice, and so on and so forth. And we really don't have to do this alone, as you well know.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of which, it's time for me to turn this show over to you, Sue. So if you've heard the SHAIR podcast before, then you know how we do this. It's time for you to share your story, the battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life when you hit rock bottom, and then finally your journey into recovery up until today. So Sue, take it away.
Okie dokie. Right. Well, hi, everybody. As Omar pointed out, or asked me pointedly a little earlier, I am nearly 58 years old, but for anybody who may be listening who knows me, they will know all too well these days what I'm going to say next, which is, if I make a mistake, please give me a break, because I'm only 5. I'm still learning, and I very much consider myself to be a work in progress, as we all are.
Yes,
forever, as far as I'm concerned. But I'm a child of the 60s, and I was born to a typically working class Yorkshire family, Yorkshire being the biggest county in England to the north, and the elder of 4 siblings, nothing remarkable or otherwise. I had what I would term, out of respect for my siblings, to be a difficult time during childhood for many reasons, and I was talking about it the other day, and I said to somebody, well, my mental health journey actually has been all my adult life, and then I actually thought about it, and I thought, you know what? No, it hasn't. My paternal grandmother was Irish by descent, and I've got very clear memories of her telling anybody that would listen that Susan, my Sunday name, Susan was a very melancholy child. The Irish are prone to be melancholy, apparently. And when I asked my only remaining aunt what she meant, she said, well, you always just seem quite sad. And I can only assume that that's based around the circumstances that I particularly found traumatic. But for me, my first dalliance with prescription drugs, as it turned out, would have been when I was 18, and I was already fragile mentally, and at 18 I was a grown up suddenly. So I thought, I need to do this. I can go to the doctors all of my own, like a big girl, and I can go in there and I can tell him what's the matter. So that would have been 1978, and I walked in there, and I kid you not 5 minutes later, I was on the pavement outside, clutching a prescription to take to my local pharmacy, which said, with the doctor's words ringing in my ear, which was, take 2 of these twice a day and you'll be as right as rain in 6 weeks. Hallelujah, I'm cured. And off I trot to the local pharmacy, get my prescription, wallop 2 of these tablets and take 2 at bedtime. And so it began. What he'd actually prescribed me was what we call today diazepam.
Yeah.
18 years old, I'm taking 2 twice a day, enough to knock a horse out. I'm as high as a kite. And he was right. That doctor was a miracle worker. 6 weeks later, I was a happy little bunny. I just didn't know I was stoned, I had no idea. I was 18 years old, and this doctor had given me permission to take these drugs. But what he didn't tell me, and I guess, to be fair, in part at that time, the medical world was still sort of catching up to things.
They're still catching up as far as I'm concerned.
Still catching up even now, absolutely.
They're still doing that.
And I stopped. He said, he told me I would be fine in 6 weeks' time. I was happy as a bunny and as high as a kite. I just didn't realize it. And I stopped taking the tablets. And of course, what happened? Boom, withdrawals, and it triggered a mutual thing for me. It triggered a mutual lack of a mutual lack of trust in medics, coupled with a lifelong cycle of, I don't need that rubbish in my life. I can get better on my own. Oh no, I can't. I'll just have a drink. Yeah, and it triggered a cyclical scenario which lasted for many, many years. I was either, forced to give up because I was so poorly mentally, and I'd go back to my GP and please make me, give me something to make me better. And we tried everything, and nothing ever came close to two diazepam twice a day.
Right.
Didn't. So it didn't do it for me. And I guess, to be honest, my first drink ever was surreptitiously behind my parents' back would have been when I was about 11. I went to a party, and I think I lathered somebody's father's whiskey bottle, if I remember rightly, and my dad had to come and rescue me from under somebody's kitchen table at 11 years old. I paid for that for a long time, but I was 11. But I think deep down that probably wasn't an issue at that point until 18 years old. I'm suddenly trying to struggle with my mental health. Nothing works like the diazepam did. I know I'll have a glass of wine, or I'll have this, or I'll have that. And fast forward to 52, by that point I'd had 4 nervous breakdowns, all as a result of the up, down. This medicine's not working for me. I'll just have another drink. That'll make me better. And that my feelings of mistrust in the medical profession, I have to say, have lasted until this day. I'm happy to report that 5 years sober now, I am officially classed as medically uncooperative by my GP. Because I literally have to be on my knees before I'll even consider taking anything.
Good.
To make me well. I would much rather drink organic juices that I make, or sort of, Manuka honey mixed with ginger and lemon and all that type of thing, if I've got a cold, for instance, because I know better. It just, we don't have to go down that route is my message to people these days when it comes to medication. There are alternate ways. And I think what I realized more than anything, and not until very, very late in the day, and by that I mean by the time I got to point of sobriety, which I'll get to in a minute, but I had lived my life up to the age of 52. I had become I'd become what the world wanted me to be before I realized who I should have been, before I remembered who I should have been, I should say.
I love it.
And it got me into so much trouble. I grew up being a people pleaser because I was scared of rejection. I grew up being a people pleaser. I would say yes when no would have been far more sensible, especially as a grown up. There was a point when I really did need 36 hours in every 24 just to get done everything I promised people that I would do, that I couldn't possibly let them down because they'd hate me, they wouldn't like me, they wouldn't speak to me, and so on and so forth. And what I now tell people every single day as I'm speaking to them and coaching and everything, be careful of your self-talk because you're listening. We are all born, we all die. It's what we do in between that counts, but the same principles apply when we wake up in the morning. When we open our eyes, we're the only ones there. Even if we're lying in bed at side of our partners, when we wake up in the morning, we open our eyes, we are the only ones there inside our brain. When we close them at night, same thing has happened. So what you do in between in that 24 hours is going to create your tomorrows. But for me personally, the story I was telling myself, especially when it came to my drinking, which started off as social, became heavily social, became problem, became you're in massive trouble. No, I'm not. I could, like most of us, I can stop anytime I like. I can do this. I just don't want to do it. I don't have one of my favorite sayings was, I don't have a drink problem. Oh, hang on. Yes, I do. I have 2 hands, 1 mouth. How am I going to cope? Because it was my way, trying to self-deprecating humor of making it okay.
Yes.
I was the last person in Sheffield, which is the city that I live in or lived in until last year. I was the last person in Sheffield to know that I was an alcoholic, except I did. But I believed the story I was telling myself. And these days, I will tell anybody and everybody who's listening to me, be careful what you're saying to yourself, because if you are starting a sentence or allowing other people to talk to you in that same way, I can't because if then I will, then you're limiting yourself. Where our self-limiting beliefs can create so much trouble for us, because they give essentially what we're doing, Omar, is we're giving ourselves permission to stay very firmly rooted in the carefully crafted facade that surrounds our comfort zone. And as much as we might not like where we are in our addictions, particularly, as much as that might be as uncomfortable and horrendous as it gets, it does, as anybody who's listening to this who's suffered will know, and or is still suffering will know, we fear what's outside that comfort zone more than we fear staying inside and feeding our addictions and our habits. It's the fear of the unknown. But I promise anybody who's listening, somebody said to me the other day, the thing is, you make it look so easy. Well, when I'd finished laughing, I said, this is anything but easy. But what it is a commitment to taking the chance to choose to change and meaning it. I think most addicts, we go through life, I should do this. I should. I can. I will. I should do it. I'm going to do it. But we don't, because our should hasn't become our must. And even when I had a must, because my liver function results for at least 3 years prior to my 5 years crisis, if you like, my crisis 5 years ago, my liver function results had been coming back every 3 months, significantly worse, quarterly. And I was still telling myself I could do this anytime I like. There isn't anything wrong with me, that a month in the Bahamas won't cure, etc. And I believed it. I didn't really, but I would tell anybody else did, And what happened to me in terms of the end of the road, as it was, I went to my doctor, my GP, the general practitioner, as we call them in the UK, 9:30 on the 26th of September 2012. Listeners and yourself can't see me now, but I'm happy to post within SHAIR later if you like. I've stayed away from doing it so far because I knew this interview was coming up, but I will a before and after pic that I use in my workshops. And I was 6.5 stone heavier than I am today, which in pounds is about, I don't know, a stone is 14 pounds. So I was 6.5 stones heavier than I am now. I was on 17 different prescriptions per day, totaling 44 different pills, potions, all manner of things for the things that medics told me was wrong with me. For sure, high blood pressure and cholesterol, definitely, but it was all self-induced. And I went to my GP at 9:30 on the 26th of September 2012, already into my second bottle of Chardonnay for the day, my second bottle of wine, because wine was my tipple. I did like spirit, but I would drink it if it was around. But for me, I was always a wine person. And I sort of bumbled into her office, sat down. She reached for the phone, picked the telephone up, and I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm phoning for an ambulance." And like an idiot, I looked over my shoulder and said, "Who for?" It was only me and her in the room. I was that much in denial. Seriously. And she looked at me and she said, "For you, Susan, you're very poorly. You need to go to hospital. You're going now." And I said, I'm not going anywhere in an ambulance. If I'm going in, then fine, I'll go in, but I need to go home and I need to tidy up and I need to pack a bag, which is what I did. But my husband came home from work in tears because she rang him and he came and fetched me. And he admitted me to my local hospital, probably about lunchtime, I think, mid-afternoon sometime. And I woke up 5 days later in a different hospital. I subsequently found out that had I not gone to my GP that day, 24 hours later, I would have been dead.
Oh, my God.
It was as close as that. And even at that point, I had the nerve, if you like, to ask why she was phoning for an ambulance for me. I was bright yellow. I couldn't function. And what had happened was my liver had decompensated. So it had gone. It had done. My kidneys were failing. My blood pressure was through the floor. And my husband tells me that I was never unconscious, but I think I was caught much like I would liken a rabbit in the headlights of a car. I was caught. I'd been backed into a corner. I did not have anywhere to run. So my must had never been stronger at that point. But even then, I was planning an escape route, you know? And 5 days in, my consultant came to me and he said, "You're a very sick young woman." And even then, I couldn't stop. And I just went, "I'll take the young," you know? And he was like, "No, I'm kidding," you know? And I can't help it. It's part of who I am, actually. I use humor quite inappropriately at times, I have to admit, but it's been my lifesaver as well on many occasions.
Yes.
And I just said, "Yeah, well, I'll take the young." And he said, "No, I'm not joking." He said, "You've won that particular ball, but you are very sick, and I don't think you're going home." And I can only tell you how I've described it recently, that in that split second, Omar, I didn't know how, if, when I would ever walk out of that hospital, let alone survive. But I knew that if I did, things would change, and for the greater good, not just for myself, but for my family. And, you know, and I put that intention out there straight away. I was crying. My husband was crying. And we have 3 children, and the youngest, who was 18 at that time, she walked in the room and said, "What's happened?" And my husband told her. The look on that girl's face, because she was 18 and I'd spent the previous 15 years. I was always present. The kids were always well looked after, and so on and so forth, until maybe the last sort of 9 months or so, when it sort of got totally out of hand. And the look on her face as she just let out this guttural sort of cry, scream. It was horrible. That's all I can say. But the look in her eyes was an equal mixture of fear, anger, hatred, but most of all, love. And in that split second of looking her in the eye properly, I think, for the first time in 15 years, I found my why. And that, my daughter's face, I can see it now as I'm talking to you. It's imprinted on my brain. And there have been times of immense stress for me in this last 4 or 5 years. And there have been times when I've marched into a bar and I've banged on the table, on the bar countertop, and the young man at the other side's looked at me and I've gone, "Give me a minute. Just give me a minute." Like a madman in a soap opera, drumming my fingers on the countertop. And then when I've calmed down, I've gone, "I'll have a Diet Coke, please." And they look at me as though I'm a lunatic. But I need, I think for me, what I'm doing even now is I'm testing myself. Yeah. But my daughter, the expression of that equal mixture, all 4 parts of those emotions I could see in her eyes and across her face. And in that split second, I thought, "You selfish." Well, I can't tell you what I said, but
yes, you can.
Woman, you selfish bitch. You what are you doing? And I'm really fortunate. My husband, my 3 kids, they're all still with me, and they're with me because they love me and I them. I know I'm fortunate on that level, because I know many people in my situation aren't. They lose everything. And that's one of the reasons why it doesn't matter what day I've had, the previous day or the day to come, good, bad or indifferent. I know that I am so much more fortunate. Apart from the fact that I'm still alive, I'm so much more fortunate than many of us who are alive but don't have that support mechanism, if you like, in and around them with their loved ones. And I spent 6 weeks there, and I obviously declined the offer to die. But I came out of there. I came out of there a different person. Inside, not out. It took a while for the outer wall, and I now know that the 6.5 stones extra in weight was just my psychological way of protecting myself against the world. And I was hiding as much behind that as there was any metaphor of a facade that I might be hiding behind. And now these days, I just don't. I've got the courage to be who I really am. I'm comfortable in my own skin. And if I have done anything right in this last 5 years or so, I think it's that I now am at a point where I can share my story with everybody. who wants to listen, obviously, and I would hope that it instills in them the single premise that we're all human, we all have good days and bad days, and we are none of us perfect. And in having previously lived in an ego-driven lifestyle, I have to do this because I promised to. If I don't do this, they will think this, and I'm not going to fail, and I'm not. I now adopt, going back to what we were saying earlier about the my higher power. My higher power, if you like, is the fact that I'm completely in tune with me, and I practice a mindful way of living. Mindfulness has become part of who I am, and I take great steps every single day. As human beings, we have 5 separate but yet interdependent pieces of ourselves which serve to make a whole. You know, the physical, the social, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual parts of us. We all have them. And when we lead an ego-driven lifestyle, we forget everything other than what's going to serve our ego. We don't forget to take care of us. And as parents or carers or whatever you are within your own life, you can only be to other people what you are to yourself. And if they see in you a lack of self-belief and disrespect for yourself, then we invite them to treat us the same way. I can't even begin to tell you that how much my life's turned around just because, I say just, it's taken a long time, but just because I now believe in myself and I trust my own instincts. You know, if your heart or your intuition or your gut or whatever you call that little piece of yourself that keeps saying, no, you don't want to do that, or you must do that, then it's you know what? It's probably the right thing for you to do, or the wrong thing if you're going to do it. You know what I mean? Whichever way it's trying to lead you. But it's really important that we factor into every single day some time for us and talk to ourselves in a positive manner. Because if we don't, we trip ourselves up and we begin that story. We believe that story we tell ourselves, and it gets us into massive trouble on so many levels. But I never had the courage to do, be, or say anything that I thought would upset anybody else. So I didn't. And these days, I'm happy to say that good or bad, because not everybody likes everybody, and I can now accept that for what it is, a fact. We don't all have to be liked and loved by everybody. It's probably totally unrealistic. But I'm happy and comfortable in myself enough to respect other people's opinions that they may not be. They may not feel that way about me, and that's fine, because I now understand that the opinions of the people, that's exactly what they are. They're their opinions. And I know that if I'm coming from a place of pure intent and my heart's in the right place, then as far as I'm concerned, that's enough for me. And if other people happen to like that, that's a massive bonus. Yeah. But we need to understand that perfectionism is an ideal. We strive to be perfect. We put ourselves under stress because we've not done this right or that right, or what will they think of me? I can't be seen to fail, and so on and so forth. Yes, you can. Nobody ever succeeded. I consider that I've succeeded in my life today because I'm still alive 5 years after they told me I was going to die. You know, for me, that's a massive success. Somebody said to me, yeah, but look at all those years you wasted. Really? Yeah, I get that. But these days, the way that I look at life is, and I actually do it with myself by way of a little game, I can always find a positive to every single negative. Because if I hadn't spent at least 15 to 18 years in my mental health drink-fueled wilderness, I wouldn't have become the person that I was born to be, the person that people see in front of them today. And this person I'm proud of. And I for sure have got far less time left to come than I've had already. You know, my liver's cirrhotic. I've got stage 3 kidney disease. I have Crohn's disease. You name it, I've got it. My medical file's about 18 inches thick. But I don't care. It's not that I don't care that I've got them. I just ignore them. I refuse to tell people that I am dying from A, B, and C, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm not. I'm living with it. It's my fault. I did that to myself, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making that up to my body. I'm going to feed it well. I'm going to replenish the nutrients and all that business, and I'm going to look after myself in a way that we should all do from day one. And it's not our fault necessarily. Life's a choice. And somebody said to me the other day, yeah, well, I can't make decisions. I can't choose things like that. And I said, you just did. What do you mean? I said, in not making a choice, i.e. in not choosing to stop drinking, therefore you've not made a choice in your brain. Actually, you've just made a choice. You've chosen not to choose. It's a conundrum. You can't get away from it. We have to take responsibility. So my rock bottom, if you like, was the 26th of September, 2012. And around that time, I became aware of the fact that J.K. Rowling of Harry Potter fame had said rock bottom became the foundation upon which she rebuilt her life. And I thought, if it's good enough for her, living in a castle, billionaire, that's good enough for me. I'll use that. And I did. But I sat down and I started blogging, and one thing led to another. And before I know where I am, I'm running coaching business, and I speak all over the place, and people want to hear not necessarily my story, but how now in my sobriety, how I cope and how I look at life. And essentially all I've done is that I've changed. And again, it was definitely Wayne Dyer, I think, that said this, when we change when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And I would implore anybody to use that as a starting point. If you're struggling, and if you can't think of a way to move forward, because it's like wading in treacle a lot of the time, isn't it? You want to do it, you should. Take your should and find your must. Your must is sometimes enough. But if you find that your must isn't enough, you need to find your why. My why was my daughter's face and the look on her face 5 years ago. I will never forget that. And I will, without wanting to sort of over egg it, as we say over here, I will spend the rest of my life trying to make that up to her in a way that, not by throwing money at her or anything like that, but being there for her, being present in her life, actually being present, not just physically in the room, And for me, that's the massive difference. And it's where I tie in with now I get I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. Didn't like the human experience very much, but I'm making up for it on the other side now. Feed your soul. Do what makes your heart sing with joy, and do it for yourself. Become, I would implore anybody that is struggling, look in the mirror and have a brutally honest conversation with yourself, because you are your own best friend. And you wouldn't lie to your best friend. If your best friend asked you a point blank question, Sue, do you drink too much? Yes. I could tell my best friend, quite honestly, yes, I do. And I can, but then I would quantify it. Look yourself in the mirror. Have a brutally honest conversation with yourself, because you're your own best friend. If you wouldn't lie to your own best friend, why would you lie to yourself? It's not easy. I'm not saying for 1 minute it is. It's hard work, but is it worth it? Oh, hell yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the most frightening times of my life in sobriety was the first Christmas. I came out of hospital after 6 weeks, and only then, because my husband promised to take 2 weeks off work to look after me, because nobody trusted that I wouldn't be back on 5 bottles of Chardonnay a day. And, they didn't trust me. I was talking the talk, but I've not walked the walk before. But I had my why. So I would implore anybody, if you're struggling still, look deep inside, because everything begins and ends with us. It starts on the inside, in that small spiritual kernel that we've all got, and it's in there. And much like the genie in Aladdin's lamp, it's just waiting to be let out. We've all got it. Everything begins and ends with us, period. And we can tell ourselves however many stories we like, and we can believe them. But when I first started blogging, the very first blog I wrote was called "What the Hell Have I Got to Be Grateful For?" And all I knew was I had a title. And I sat there for a couple of hours, and by the time I finished, I thought, okay, yeah, that'll do. That's not bad for a first blog. Oh, I can live with that. But the last paragraph came back to what the hell have I got to be grateful for? I'll tell you. Every good job I've had that I loved and lost. Every bad job that I hated, but it paid me well, so I sold my soul for time, for money. Every bad relationship I had and stayed in, every good relationship I left and walked away from. All the things that served to make me me, from the day I was born to the day that I very nearly died, made me who I was up to that point. I then, at that point, 6 weeks hence, came home, and the first thing I did was sit down and start to journal and to write, and it all sort of came gushing out, as it were. And I realized then that actually, how could I deny anything that had ever happened to me previously? Anything. The trauma of childhood, my mental health, my addiction, especially my addiction, what had happened to me up to a point I'd been powerless over. We're all born as a blank canvas. As children, we come into this world a blank canvas, and our lives are firmly mapped out for us, in the early years at least, by parents who want us to do this or do that. And if we're lucky, we have kind and nurturing parents. And I largely did, to be fair. And I had amazing grandparents. And in many ways, even though I consider parts of my childhood to have been traumatic, I was very, very lucky. I was very lucky. But what the bit that I missed was, as a younger person, I blamed a certain person for various things that had happened. And of course, because I blamed them for that, then my mental health was their fault. And then I started to drink too much. That wasn't my fault either, because they'd caused the mental ill health. So I hung my mental health on their hook, and then I hung my alcoholism on my mental health hook, which is obviously it's on the same hook. So it's obviously all their fault. And when you're caught in the spotlight and somebody says to you, you've done this all yourself. You're drinking yourself to death. And I suddenly realized when I walked into the GP's 1978 as an 18-year-old, and I came out with that prescription in my hand, and I walked down the road to the chemist and I cashed it in, and I took 2 diazepam a day, twice a day, every day for 6 weeks. I had no idea the road that I was beginning along. But what I failed to understand at that point was I had a choice. I was a grown-up. I had a choice. I didn't choose the correct choice. I made some really horrifically bad choices in my life from the age of 18 to 52, and then some. But not once did I ever understand that the choices I was making were creating my tomorrows. If we need a better tomorrow, we need to make better choices today, because the decisions we make today create our tomorrows. It's no good looking back. We can only look back to connect the dots and learn from the past is where it should be. It's in the past. The lessons that we can take forward into our future are what we need to connect together and bring to the present so we can move mindfully into the future and to a brighter future, as far as I'm concerned, for myself and anybody else who's in a similar situation, that is one that is full of renewed optimism and fresh hope. Because no matter what, Omar, there is always, always, always hope.
Yes.
Even on the darkest of days, whether we see it or not at that time, it's there. Absolutely, 110% every time. So my life today is completely different. I get to speak to amazing people like you, and I get to be part of amazing communities like SHAIR and Team Sober UK and all that, and I am, somebody said to me the other day, you're surprisingly normal. And I said, really? You stick around for a little while, you'll soon understand you got that bit wrong, but that's fine, because I'm happy to be classed as normal if that's what society thinks that I need to be. But much like perfectionism, normal doesn't exist.
Right.
It's somebody else's idea, and that comes back to the opinions of others. We're none of us failures in this life. We were born. The chances of our being born in the incarnation that we stand before each other today are hundreds of millions to one. You've got more chance of winning the lottery than you have of being born in this exact same form.
Yes.
Again, and by definition, that makes all winners. But what we need to understand is, we're all unique. We're all unique, and it doesn't matter. There isn't a right way or a wrong way to get through our addiction or any other issue that we've got going on, regardless of what the addiction is. And whether, myself, I was, and I think certainly lots of addicts that I speak to here in the UK have a dual diagnosis of mental health problems. We are all unique. We are normal, but our normal is confined to us. Society tries so hard, doesn't it, to fit square pegs into round holes, and people cave into the pressure. People in high-flying jobs, the J.R. Ewings of this world, God bless him, they walk in from a hard day. The first thing they do is they pick up a whiskey bottle and they, down a couple of shots of JD or whatever. And that's normal, in inverted commas. It must be true because we see it on TV. One of the best days' work I ever did in sobriety was announcing to my family that I was never going to watch television again. And they all went, yeah, right. I gained 18 hours a week of my life back just by deciding, as part of my sobriety plan, not to watch TV. Because, I was sick to death of the fear-driven rubbish that's been put out there. We don't have to watch it. I subscribe to a streaming service, and I watch sort of spiritual and meditative films and that type of thing. I'm a big fan of the Zen channel on YouTube and that type of thing. We don't have to be subject to what society deemed to be normal coming across the airwaves. Not in today's, gone are the days when you're stuck to sort of 4 channels and that's all you've got to watch because everybody in your street's watching it. We're all watching Dallas or Coronation Street as it is in this country. We're all watching it. Did you see what so-and-so did? No. Why? Because I'd rather stick pins in my eyes. I've got a life to live. And I don't mean that to be rude to people that do, but for me, it formed part of my addiction. So I needed to distance myself from it. I would sit in front of the TV mindlessly drink and just drink while I was watching TV. And I rarely remembered what the plot line was the next day because I totally lost the plot by the time I'd gone to bed, both literally off the TV and in my life. I didn't know where I was, who I was, or let alone what J.R. Ewing was doing on television. We need to live in the present moment. And I will spend however long I've got left, I will spend the rest of my life doing just that. So for me, if nothing else, a legacy that I would leave behind to people is whoever and whatever we are. If this is instilled in us actually as children, and it's part of the work that I do with children in this country now, I instill in them that it doesn't matter who or what we are, where we come from, what our academic abilities like, what our financial background's like, what our culture is or our religion. It does not matter. Whoever we are enough. We will always be enough. The fact that other people might not like it, that's fine. We don't have to please everybody, but we have to look after ourselves and we have to believe in ourselves. And I'm not talking about, people that go out and commit heinous crimes and stuff like that. I'm talking about the ordinary man in the street who thinks he's not good enough because airbrush models are on the TV or, multimillionaire footballers have Dolly Bird wives and they drive Porsches and Ferraris and we all don't have one and that type of thing. Doesn't matter. They largely won't be happy people because they're not comfortable in their own skin. Because they daren't step out. The airbrush models, for instance, dare not step out their front door, as I would get out of bed in the morning and just go out and fetch the milk, I mean, to be honest, I frighten the neighbours. But, people have an image to keep up that they've created. They're putting themselves under enormous pressure. And that's why people descend into the oblivion. Obviously it's not solely why, but it can be part of the reason why people descend into oblivion because they're trying to escape the pressures that we all put on ourselves. I would just say to people, give yourself a break. Give yourself a break and understand that whoever and whatever you are, regardless of what other people think, you are enough.
Yes, absolutely. Sue, you have this amazing story that is has so many twists and turns that I don't even know where to begin, but there's so much. My first question to you is, are you still drinking Diet Cokes?
I realised that Diet Coke actually is probably going to kill me just as quickly.
You're running through your gamut of stuff that's chronic in your life, your liver, your kidneys. You've got all these issues. Like, I'm living my life, but I'm still going to be putting poison in it. So.
Yes. No, I largely drink mineral water these days.
Okay. All right.
So no. I do admit I do have the odd Diet Coke, but I try really, really hard to if I'm having soft drinks, as opposed to hot drinks like teas and coffees and stuff. But I try and stick to the decaf, and I like green teas and the lemon and teas and stuff like that. But when I'm out and about, I will largely 99% of the time I will be drinking sparkling water or still water or something like that. So yep. But I am a work in progress, and as I said right at the very beginning, I'm only 5. I'm learning.
And also, as far as your liver and kidneys, are you in any sort of like stage 4 chronic life-threatening situation, or is it all manageable?
No. My kidney disease is at stage 3, so that's manageable. That's just, and at the moment they're just maintaining watchful eyes on me. My liver's cirrhotic. As far as my kidneys are concerned, that's stage 3, and they're just that's just a maintenance. I go for routine checkups. My liver is cirrhotic. I have cirrhosis of the liver. But my liver function tests show that because I'm being such a good girl these days, my liver has recompensated to a degree. And it's behaving itself. So what happens now is, as far as the medics at this side, and it's the only real support that I allow them to give me, to be fair. Right. But I go once a year for a body scan. So my body is scanned to make sure, largely for my abdomen, but to make sure there's nothing else sinister going off. Because when your liver is cirrhotic, as mine is, the next step is often cancer.
Right.
It can often turn cancerous. So initially, I was having those body scans every 6 months. Today, I have them once every year. Just before I had my last one in August, and everything's come back fine. It's still cirrhotic, and it will remain so. But the bit that isn't cirrhotic is functioning well enough that it's compensated for itself. So it's done what they call in this country. It's what we call recompensated. And I have regular bloods every 3 months and that type of thing. And if I need any sort of vitamin D's and things like that, shots and things to bolster it, it's all sort of damage limitation stuff at the minute. So it's like a maintenance program, if you like. The prognosis, I deliberately haven't asked for a prognosis. I don't want to know, because let's face it, as far as I'm concerned, this exact moment is my life, as it is yours, as it is, my husband's, who's in a different room, and none of us know how long we've got. My consultant told me 5 years ago, when he let me go, as it were, when he released me back into the community, he told me that if I ever started drinking again, I would be dead within 12 months. And I sort of went, oh, well, thanks for sharing that. He's a very blunt Irishman, and I love him to pieces. He takes no prisoners. And he sort of said, I can promise you 5 good years without any unforeseen problems. To which I consider myself to be a wordsmith, and I just said to him, okay, so what are the ones that you foresee? And he said, sorry. I said, you just told me you see 5 years of unforeseen problems. By definition, that means you see problems. I want to know what they are. And he just went, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, shall we? And I left it at that, because I was still, literally that was sort of 3 or 4 days before he let me come home, and I was still very fragile mentally, so I didn't push it. And afterwards I thought, you know what? And I've seen him, multiple times since, and I don't feel the need to ask the question, because I'm happy. As far as I'm concerned, I'm healthy. I tell my body every single day that it's healthy. I have chronic peripheral neuropathy in my legs, which when I was a drinker, an addict, when I was a practicing addict, because I am an addict, but you understand what I mean. Yes. I was told that peripheral neuropathy was as a result of the alcohol abuse, and I was killing the nerves in my legs. And if I stopped drinking, it wouldn't get any worse, but it wouldn't get any better because once the nerves are dead, they're dead. Now, 5 years ago, that neuropathy was maybe from sort of the tips of my toes to my ankles. Today, we're talking sort of mid-thigh level. And these little pins of mine, because I'm only 5'2", so they are quite small pins, my legs, and they frequently try and bend themselves into positions that an advanced yogi wouldn't be able to get us into, and they sort of spasm and twist, and I've just been referred actually back to neurology because they don't know what's causing it. My GP seems to think it's a neurological thing. Whether or not that's actually anything to do with the addiction, I don't know. I've yet to find out. But again, I've got to a point now where I'm not afraid to ask questions.
Yes, good.
And I just said, okay, so you told me when I was drinking that it was my fault. Now, I'm stone cold sober, have been for 5 years. This is a million times worse in terms of percentages than it was. What the hell's going off? Because it's clearly not because I'm drinking, And they just said, well, we think we might have taken our eye off the ball, but that doesn't mean to say drinking is not responsible. And I said, you've lost me there, so I think we'll just leave it at that. But what I did say to them was, you need to explain this to me. And they said, well, peripheral neuropathy is nerve damage. And nerve damage, the nerves in your legs are dying. We just don't know why yet. So I just said, okay, so does that mean I'm going to end up in a wheelchair one day? What do you mean? I said, well, there's got to come a tipping point, surely. If I get to 51% of the nerves in my legs aren't working anymore, if they're dead, surely that means I'm not going to be able to walk. And I got the stock same answer. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And that's just got to be an English thing. It must be. And I just went, do you know what? Let's just deal with it, So I periodically trip over. I'm one of these people that actually, for anybody watching me as I'm walking through a shopping mall or something like that, I am one of these people that trip over and then jump back up and look round and go, okay, nobody's me. I'm good. It's all good. And I'll just carry on walking,
Good.
But you know what? It's all part of the new me. And it's sometimes on bad days, as far as my legs are concerned, it can be pretty bad. But I just think, you know what, it is what it is, and I can't control it. And trying to control everything previously is part of what got me into trouble. So these days, I control what I can, and I accept what I can't, and I let go of everything else because I see no point in doing anything else. I've got every intention of being the first woman in the UK to live to be 150. That's my mindset. That's my goal. I practice growth mindset. It's what I teach people how to do these days. I'm much like throwing myself out of an airplane. It's part of who I decided to be. I decided to be a fearless person as opposed to to be a person who was living her life dancing to somebody else's tune. I decided I didn't want to be a pale imitation of somebody else's life. I wanted to be a first-rate version of mine. And however long I've got left, that's what I'm going to be. I stopped making New Year's resolution many years ago, largely because it would always be, I'm going to stop drinking. 31st of December, I'm going to stop drinking. And by lunchtime on the 1st of January, I was a pissed to fart, And it's just, and I stopped doing it because I was always letting myself down. I was setting myself up to fail. So these days, I don't make New Year's resolutions. I put a post out the other day, we don't need New Year's Day to make a new start. Every day is a fresh start. As far as I'm concerned, every day is New Year's Day. It's the youngest I'm ever going to be. Today is the youngest I am ever going to be. So therefore, I don't need to wait for New Year's Eve. If I'm going to do something differently, if I'm going to take that chance to choose to change, I'm going to do it today. And I'm going to set an intention and I'm going to do it. And so last year, I wrote myself, I decided I would have an A4 page with 10 things on it, a rolling intentions list is what I called it. And I set out that this year, starting last year, I think it was about November time, I wrote 10 things down. I was going to do a tandem skydive. I was going to go to India. I'm going to have fearless tattooed on my left shoulder blade. It's got a little butterfly coming off the S. I'm going to learn to ice skate, even though these legs don't work. I'm going to learn to ice skate. I'm going to read War and Peace. I'm going to go and see a Broadway show. I'm going to see a real opera and a real ballet. And what were the other two? I'm going to do a microlight flight and a hot air balloon flight. And somebody said, that sounds too much pressure. And I said, that's your bucket list. And I said, no. That's my bucket list. If I have a bucket list, I'm giving myself permission to do those 10 things sometime before I die. As soon as I now believe that this moment is my life, that's a big ask even by my standards, you know. So I'm just going to do those as and when the opportunity presents themselves. And when one drops off, I'm just going to add another one onto it. This year so far, I've been to India. I went to India for a week to speak at the Women's Economic Forum there about mindfulness and living a holistic lifestyle. I've done my tandem skydive, and I've done one of the other things. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but I've got a rolling list. So I've always got projects on the boil, and my husband's we went through a phase in the summer going, what are you going to do today? And he wasn't meaning, when are you going to be working? Or what have we got planned for today? You know, because I realized almost too late that life is an opportunity. You know, we don't have problems in life, Omar. We do. I just choose not to acknowledge them as problems these days. For me, they are either a challenge, they're an obstacle, but more importantly, they are all opportunities to learn.
Yes.
And largely something about ourselves. You know, bottom line is there are no rich men in cemetery. We're all going to go out of here the same way as we came, penniless and naked. It doesn't matter, you know. It's the bit we do between being born and dying that's going to set us apart. And if I happen to be able to leave my kids, you know, a couple of million quid each or whatever for them to live in their dotage on, that's fine. If not, their legacy will be one of love and integrity and honesty and trust and respect. And I'll consider that to be a job well done, to be honest.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. So, Sue, tell us, what is the best way for our listeners to get a hold of you, reach out to you, and find you?
You can find me all over social media. I'm a bit like chicken pox. I'm all over the place. But my website is suecurr.com. So it's SUECURR.com. All over that, there are big purple buttons with the word empower me stuck in the middle of it. Just click that. That'll directly connect you to my email. And it does come directly to me. It's not hooked up to any sort of CRM or anything like that. It's straight through to me. Sometimes takes me a while to answer, but I can. You can find me on LinkedIn under my own name. You can find me on Instagram, Fear Less, Live More Now. Twitter, @Sue Curr, SUECURR. Facebook, Fear Less, Live More. And I'm pretty much all the other social media little channels. You can find me on somewhere or another. If anybody wants to or does go to my website, they will find a free download on there called Where Am I Going? Find Your Way to Clarity and Focus. Please feel free to download that. And it's a self-help book. It's not a read. Well, obviously you have to be able to read it, but it's a self-help in terms of a journey of self-discovery. And they're the questions that I largely used on myself in my early recovery to lead me to clarity and gain focus in my life. So to be honest, I felt it would be rude not to share it. That's a free download. If anybody wants it, they're more than welcome to go to suecurr.com and get that.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. I will look forward to hearing the playback and then cussing myself for any sort of improprieties. I do sometimes let this mouth of mine run away with me. My father once told me I needed a license for it, but I think he's forgiven me since.
It's a beautiful story. You tell it beautifully. It's eloquent. It's detailed. There's so many wonderful takeaways. I don't even know where to begin, but I'm grateful that you joined us today and grateful that you shared your story with us. Thank you so much again.
Thank you very much for having me, Omar. Thank you very much. Cheers.
All right. So we've now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.
Thank you for joining us on the SHAIR Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.theshairpodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-Step Fellowship as a whole. And though we discuss 12-Step recovery and the impact it had in our lives, we do not promote or endorse any 12-Step Anonymous program.